First up, with Fauci's 8 monkeys on the loose, we break down what you can do to protect your asshole. You're not gonna get me, monkey! Next, culinary tips from Gavin Newsom on how to prepare Wacky Mac and Wonder Bread for the holidays as he continues to explore his fake poor roots. With Republicans hoping the demonstration might lead to a Chuck Schumer moment of not even knowing how to open the box. Next, the internet discovers the quickest way to have the entire world knowing that you have a gigantic dick, which is by showing it to black lesbians at Gold's Gym.
At Gold's Gym, men, grown men with big dicks in the women's locker room.
Next, why Bill Gates is saying it's time to warm the planet. Next, we talk to Prince Andrew's kids about being evicted.
Oh, father, I want a new palace. I can't live like the paws. I want wealth in new dentures and servants galore. Father, my teeth are falling out.
Next, an update on Trump's Gaza ceasefire, the greatest ceasefire ever, a ceasefire so great that it even exists in the presence of fire. And lastly, new claims that nobody in the White House was aware of Joe Biden's diminishing mental faculties has many wondering what Democrats are capable of noticing.
Tell you what you gotta do. Don't listen to them unless you think it's true. Follow your heart and your dreams. Follow your heart and your dreams.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. We got to make an adjustment there. Anyways, I'm seated today because I got too much of the equipment stuff in the car. This place is a trash pit. You can literally see the trash there. But, you know, we're here for the Zora Mamdami victory rice party because the entire New York City is going to be flattened into rice fields, and that's primarily what they're going to be eating. And, you know, we're going to celebrate them for all it is. Listen, off the bat, if for some reason the audio is not perfect, I will re-release the episode and sync it with sound later, but we're going live, and we got to get it done because I'm already back on the road tomorrow, and looking forward to take a little bit of a break. Anyways, yeah, I already see there's some action in the chat, and then we got a whole bunch of things that I'd like to get into. On Express, has anyone addressed the Gavin Wax guy who rattled out that young Republican groups chat looks like Robbie in the newscaster wig? I've not seen that. Shout out to Eric John, pizza artist, who actually made me the pizza strips with roast beef and olives and came out even better than expected. Runaway Slav, Rob, I'm on your team. Don't make me look like a jerk off with this humiliating ritual of tapping, inserting when I could have swiped the whole time. There you go. All right. Anyways, I got quite a bit that I would like to get into, and let's start with this. And I think it speaks to the amount of travel that I've been doing, and I've been loving doing all the stand-up shows. I actually wish that I had more on the docket. I feel like the material's really cooking, coming together, and I am as sharp as I've ever been. The last 2 weeks of shows were an absolute blast, but as I'm already starting to think about 2026 and the changes I have to make in my life, I think one of them is I just have to start getting mad at things sooner, because I really try and keep my chill and then save it for the podcast. I take little notes of all the things that are irritating me, And then I relay it to you guys who also have to get out in the world and interact with all these idiots, which is really why at this point I'm just advocating for more artificial intelligence and to let the dumbasses die off of natural causes. I really think that that might just be the best way forward for humanity at this point. But I've noticed that the universe seems to enjoy, I almost believe that there's a higher power that enjoys when I George Costanza out and I spaz and I get really annoyed. And so what the universe does is it likes to constantly poke at me until I get to the breaking point, and then it leaves me alone for the day. It's like the universe wants one good autistic spaz out, and once it gets it for me, it's like having an orgasm. How many times can you do in a day? It's like the universe just wants to watch me spaz once, and then it leaves me alone. And I'm noticing that, you know, sometimes the spaz doesn't even come till 2 a.m. because I kept it chill all day as things were irritating me. And then it's finally the one last thing when the GPS messes up. And after, you know, trying to get your hotel at 2 a.m. for a full day of travel, it doesn't let you know that there's an exit. And then you're yelling at Menuhin, who's also just been keeping it pretty chill all day. And it just kind of, I'm starting to realize that maybe if I just got mad at the first thing that annoyed me, the universe might not throw more bullshit at me. And that I actually think that there's some sort of a higher power that gets amusement out of me losing my shit and will consistently poke at me until I lose my shit, which leads me to believe that maybe I just have to lose my shit sooner. And on that note, I am starting to take stock on that, not trying maybe not to be as nice to people and just letting things slide. Because, you know, there's a lot of bad businesses, and I don't know what happened in my childhood, but I was trained to just be nice to people, and it doesn't seem to be working as an adult, where you just try and be easygoing, charitable, generous, and just generally nice. And the rest of the universe just so, you know, one of the big things on the road is just trying to find food that won't poison you. And you guys don't travel as much as I do, and you have stronger stomachs. You probably don't know what I'm referring to. And I was out in New Hampshire and, you know, woke up, hotel breakfast. I tried the eggs there and I was like, this is going to poison me. Menuhin had the same thought of this is fake food. The hard-boiled eggs didn't taste like what a hard-boiled egg's supposed to taste like. And you're like, all right, listen, I'll just eat later in the day. It's no big deal. And I go for a run and there's like a deli right across the street from the path that I was jogging on. And it's got a sign there, sandwiches, eggs, the works. And I was like, all right, you know, maybe this guy's has decent stuff. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I can't stand a preheated egg patty. It's really not that hard to fry up 2 eggs. It's incredible to me that such a simple breakfast food is so complicated to acquire in most cities. But it's not that easy just to get your hands on 2 normal eggs on a piece of bread. I promise you, I'm in a different city every weekend. And if you want to challenge me on this, I'll start documenting in every city how difficult it is just to get your hands on 2 freshly fried eggs. So I walk into a place and I asked the guy, I was like, hey man, are you making eggs? And he's like, yeah. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to take these 2 sandwiches. Figure I'll bring one back to menu and be nice. And then he like opens up the disgusting egg jordan. And I'm like, I thought you said you were making it. He's like, no. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to skip out on that. Now, in the past, in pre-inflation days, most of the time, I'd just be like, shit, now I got to pay for these sandwiches. I don't want to make the guy feel bad. But, like, I did the right thing. I showed up. I asked the question. I was going to burden this guy. Could have said no. And I was like, all right, well, I got to buy something. I'm already in the guy's store. I feel like a dickhead. And I'm like, why do I feel like a dickhead? This Indian guy lied to me. I asked him the question if he's cracking eggs. He said yes. Lied right to my face. Was trying to pawn off some fake eggs to me. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to be grabbing an energy drink. Like, I'll just grab it here. And then it was like stadium pricing. And I was like, I'm not going to tell the guy I don't want the thing twice. But I'm like, that's what I mean by just getting mad sooner, where it's like, I wasn't in the wrong here. That guy was in the wrong. And then on top of that, I've noticed with irritation, sometimes, you know, people, they like to, you know, I like to be agreeable and I like to get along with other people or hang out with other people that are generally courteous and not looking to impose on you, but to make sure that they're being gracious and not being annoying. But there's a lot of people that have been wired differently. They've been taught, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, and they're imposing people. They're the pokers that I'm talking about that the universe sent to see how much they can annoy you, where they just want to see every relationship to them is to see how much they can get away with and how many lines they can cross. And if they cross too many lines and you bark back at them, they go, oh, okay, that was the line. And then they go back to retesting. I don't like being around those people. And so, for example, I've complained about my neighbors in this building, and they frequently leave giant piles of trash outside my door. And then I get annoyed because I'm like, when did I become a grandma where I care about like, I need to walk into a nice office? It doesn't matter. It's a hallway. I don't spend time in the hallway. But every time I show up, it does annoy me. I'm like, why do I got to see this pile of this guy's trash right outside the place? And now, right now, he's got like an empty, dirty, it's not even empty. There's just a dirty water bucket mop thing out there. And you're like, all right, that crosses the line. I don't really want to be in my office smelling your dirty mop water. And that's the problem. You let all the early infractions slide, and then you come up with like a psychopath because they like to pretend like, oh, I didn't even realize it bothered you. And it's like, buddy, you've been testing the line. You just pushed it to the point now I got to say something. I'm like, why didn't I just say something sooner? So anyways, I got to address that one. But I do have just one more general feeling about businesses and customer service. And it just falls into the same thing of like, why are we the ones feeling bad? And how do we put more of the shame on them and get mad sooner and actually correct some of these irritations that every business on the planet is throwing our way? Thank you, Jack Burden, with the egg gate. I agree with you. It's psychotic that as you cross this nation, it is so difficult to get your hands on 2 normal eggs. But anyways, I was staying at a hotel in New Hampshire, a Marriott, a fine Marriott, whatever the hell it cost a night, $150, whatever it was. A normal brand of Marriott's. And when we checked in, the guy could only give us 1 key. And it was already 2 a.m. after I was like, there's 2 of us. We can't get 2. He's like, I only have 1. I was like, all right, I'll come down in the morning for another. Because you really don't want to have to coordinate with the front desk if you got to take a shit. You don't want to make sure the other guy's in a room. You're an adult. It already sucks to have to be sharing hotel rooms as an adult. It's not the most pleasant thing, but you get through it, you know? It's part of life on the road. Slinging tickets for porches. You're sharing rooms. It's particularly annoying when the other guy wakes you up at 6 a.m. or you wake up at 8 a.m. You want to get work done. Doesn't matter. Listen, it's not great as an adult when you got to share hotel rooms. And then I go down the next morning to try and get a key, and they gave me this whole thing about how the keys aren't turning off, and so there's a security risk. They can't give out more keys, but there's always going to be someone at the desk to let you in the room. And I wish I was still the high school version of me, because the high school version of me would have taken my group of friends and been on a 15-minute rotation of going back to the desk and telling them that you got locked out of the room until they finally just gave us a sec. I would have been like, all right, fine. You guys are always going to be here, and no question, you'll let us into the room. I would have Rick and Morty that stuff, all right? But now, you just try to be a nice person. But there's like just something to, if you messed up as a business, and you know that you've messed up as a business, because the guy apologized. He's like, listen, I'm on the front lines here. No one's happy with me. I don't want to have to be going up to the rooms. There's nothing I can do for you. Email Marriott. And then I laid off. Not that I was giving him that hard of a time. It's not like I was yelling at him. I was just trying to figure out why they couldn't grant me a second key. But it's like, I didn't check into prison. I don't want to find the warden to get in and out of my cell. You just want a key so you can get in and out of the room that you paid for. Not unreasonable. And if you can't provide the 2 keys, the way to do it is to be like, listen, we fucked up. We charged you for a room, and we can't actually provide you with the normal things for a room. So off the bat, we're not going to pretend like this is normal. We're just going to apologize and go, we are sorry for inconveniencing you. And on behalf of inconveniencing you, and then you give me a bullshit trinket. You go, here's a free cookie. Here's a beer. Here's a 10% off. And I'll never even use the thing that you gave to me. But it's just that little thing where you don't just pretend like it's totally normal and it's my fault that I want 2 keys. You got to go through 2 different people at 2 different processes to finally, and then you got to poke at them a little bit to be like, I don't get what's going on here. And they just treat you like you're the asshole until finally you press enough time that they're like, oh yeah, but they never apologize. And what happens to that thing of just like, we're sorry we messed up. Here's 25% back. Here's a coupon. Here's a chocolate. Here's something as a token of we know that we are irritating you for absolutely no reason other than we're not actually doing the service that we charged you for. Anyways, episode is brought to you by YoKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo, only place in the entire world that you can get an entire kilo of Kratom for just $60. And got a couple other things to get into, then I will dip into the comments. But firstly is it's the last weekend of porches. If you guys live in Jacksonville, Savannah, Charleston, or the New Orleans area, I got shows this upcoming week. I'm doing one more run of headlining shows at Steamboat. If you want to come out and ski with me, I will be there. I think it's December 19th and 20th. And then the 21st, I'm going to be doing a day drinker from Inga's Lounge. And then I also got one gig left on the year, which is closing out the year with Sam Tripoli. I would like to be doing more shows. I'm just burnt out on traveling and coordinating the shows. So hopefully I'll get up a little bit more locally. But if you have not already, please subscribe to the Robbie the Fire channel. I'm going to be dropping a lot of stand-up from this past year. I did something a little weird. I was hoping to put out a new full hour at the end of this year, and I could have made a push, but there's some stuff that I wrote in the last 3 months I think is the best stuff I've ever done, and I realized I might as well tour with it next year, and because I didn't do it on most of the shows, and see if I can make that even better. So I'm basically just trying to put out all the topical stuff from this past year, which was working all year, but it's kind of, news stories. They only last so long. And I filmed it in California. It was a good show. It's not the best show I've ever done. We had 30 people out there, but I have put together a very weird format. I would call it Rick and Morty meets Louie. And so there's going to be 2 separate Porch 1, Porch 2, actually different titles, and then a whole bunch of other just stand-up clips from throughout the year of dates that I've done without actually putting out any clips from. So if you guys like my stand-up, please rate, review, subscribe to the channel. And then just one more thing, we're done with the censorship era on the internet from COVID and other topics, which is very nice. However, I am confronting the fact that, like on Shorts, if I post a dirty joke, it will get 30 views, whereas if it's just a less chaotic joke, it can get 1,000 to 3,000. And I'm not going to stop doing the content that I want to do. However, all of these platforms basically just put it on mute if it's offensive jokes, which I don't even understand. Like, I guess I kind of understand it if it's the political topics that they're not interested in. But if something's just a stupid, filthy joke, I don't really understand why the algorithms flag it as it's like, I don't work at Comedy Central here. There should not be. And the channel's not even monetized. The fact that you got to try and change your content to make it more neutral because there's still censorship that downgrades it is pretty, I'm just going to say irritating. I don't really know what the workaround is for it. So I do ask you guys organically to do a little bit more to share the content. If you like one of the shorts, email it to friends, send it to friends, text it to friends. I'm just telling you, any of the more offensive jokes, the algorithm basically just shoves directly into the garbage and is seen by virtually nobody. So if you guys appreciate what's going on in the intros, if you've never rate, reviewed, subscribed on Instagram or otherwise, please do so. And that's enough random chatter. Let's take some topics and get into the news, because I do have quite a bit that I'd like to get into. Mr. Rude Boy saying, order sunny side up. On the road, I like to go with a fried egg, because everything else, I don't know if like they're adding dairy or other crap to it. Mike Tucker, audio sounds good here. Good morning from Okinawa, Japan. Wow, that's exotic. All the way out in Okinawa. All right. I didn't realize I was getting that far out into the world. Mike Tucker, agreed on the eggs. They use pure cooked pancakes too. Not pre-mixed batter, pre-cooked. Shameful. That is shameful. It's like breakfast is not that complicated to make good breakfast. What are we doing here? Let's get it together, country. Where's the president on this one? Make eggs great again. All right, now let's get into news topics. Producer man, if you could put the thing up on the stage. Let's see what we're working with here. That's the wrong thing. We don't need that. We can take that down. We can go to this. I'm not seeing this. Here we go. Here we go. All right, let's get into it. What do I got? I got a bunch of things that I just wanted to explore quickly. Some quick snapshot topics for all of you guys. No fancy slides, none of that stuff. Everything's all backwards here. All right, so let's start with the Supreme Court tariffs. And it's another example of something I've mentioned on the show multiple times, which is our Supreme Court and judicial system makes absolutely no sense. They need a secondary Supreme, because, all right, here's why it makes no sense, is that you can enact your agenda. There's no penalty if you get it wrong. And then it's like a year before it gets to the Supreme Court and they tell you you can't do it. And so instead, when you want to enact a policy, instead of having your lawyers that will go ahead and basically be like, well, I don't know if we can do this, but we can argue it, so you might as well do it and see if we get away with it. Biden did it with not being able to evict people during COVID. It happens all the time. And so they stretch what their powers are, and they go, hey, eventually we get to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court, they are an odd branch of government because, unlike every other government branch of government that wants to exert as much authority as it can on us, the Supreme Court, as much as possible, wants to stay out of things and be like, that's for other people to decide. And then sometimes it goes even farther where they're like, I don't know if you can legally do this, but you've already been doing it, and we don't really want to get involved in the policy, which that's wild. That you can do so much of something that unwinding it is bad, and then the Supreme Court's like, I think we got to stay out of this one, because they just kind of don't want to have a heavy hand. And so now you've had Donald Trump's been doing 6 months on and off tariffs. The way I'd understood it originally was that he couldn't use emergency powers for sweeping tariffs, but he could do individual tariffs. And while I don't agree with the tariff policy, and I guess I've seen arguments that it should be in the hands of Congress / when Nixon did it, it was post gold standard. And even those, you got to correct me on this one because I really just skimmed it, but I think even those got struck down. But it's amazing that if he's been running with this thing for 6 months and it just turns out to be illegal anyways, that why did we have to go through the whole charade of it? So I just think structurally our Supreme Court system is rather stupid. All right, now let's get into the Venezuela, Nigeria situation and the sending the Patriot missiles over to Ukraine. It does not seem like the Ukraine war is de-escalating. We can go back to what I said at the beginning of the Ukraine war, that when China and India didn't back us and we couldn't bully them into it, the thing was over. Now, when Trump got into office, I was like, this minerals deal, everything else, just stop sending them military gear. It'll be over. That's it. Just quit sending them supplies, force Europe to go pay for it, which they don't want to do, and that'll be the end of the thing. But of course, they just keep wanting to go with it and be a strong man. And now Donald Trump, he's talking about, you think he should get involved in Nigeria? What do you guys feel about that? And now all this talk about Venezuela. Now, I'm hearing from some of the experts that I like to follow that the Venezuela thing is not just about oil. And so, listen, this is real surface level. I'm just going from the gut on this one. I think that there's a Russia-influenced storyline in both Africa and probably in South America where strongman Donald Trump is being talked to from his advisors, and they're pretending like the Russia war thing is still winnable, which maybe it is. Maybe give us the pitch that, listen, Ukraine people are all going to die. They're going to lose their country, but we will have bankrupted Russia and we will have bogged them down so much that we were able to flip Syria and we were able to keep them out of resource-rich areas in both Africa and Venezuela because we're purely imperialistic. We're running an empire, and this was our ability to grab these territories and ensure that we would have access to these resources. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, that I think behind the scenes there's actually a geopolitical play here, and they think that they're taking advantage of the Ukraine situation. Nobody's selling it that way. Nigeria is apparently over what's going on with Christians in the area. Venezuela is apparently over the fact that no one in this country can get good jobs, and so they're all doing fentanyl. And apparently the Venezuela is the worst offender of having our people on fentanyl. I mean, all of these stories are bullshit. I wish they could just give us the real story. And as I've commented on Donald Trump before, there's such a circle of chaos with this stuff that these topics don't linger long enough for you to kind of divulge into or muck crack the storylines. Usually these storylines stay in the news longer. And so you're able to kind of actually figure out what's going on. We'll see to what extent he escalates all of these, but my gut shot reaction here is that they're playing the imperialistic game for resources, and they're seeing an opportunity to limit or weaken Russia, which I'm going to guess won't work out, and it will benefit the elites and all the people in the military-industrial complex, because that's a pretty safe bet for how these storylines go. Now, last week, because this is just a floating thought in my head about strongman politics. You see, I'm a dumb hippie, and I'm of the belief that, we could just trade and get along. and trade is a very good way of ensuring, mutual benefits from getting along with people and mutual destruction if you choose not to get along with them. And to me, strong militaries are a little bit like if you showed up to a first date with the divorce lawyer and you're not going to get along with that lady. That's what a strong military is. I'm going to get along with these people, so I got to make sure I got a strong military. So they don't take it's like that's not the way to get along with people. Relationships are relationships, whether it's between you're trying to get minerals from China or vagina from a lady, it's the same thing. But every country seems to have this idea that if I'm not super strong and take advantage of them, they're going to take advantage of me. And I think where people end up losing the long run in this is, I'm sure you guys have all friends who are aggressive gamblers and they keep going all in. They keep going all in. If you ever play poker with those people, they win a couple hands. They'll take a couple of suckers off the table. They get more confident in playing aggressive. And every time I've ever played, those people always end up losing. And last week I did that dumb Napoleon sketch. You can go watch it. It was kind of funny about the drummer boy because I was bored on a plane. I was watching clips from that movie. And then I decided to briefly read a recap of the Napoleon Wars because I'm fairly uneducated about history. But I feel like that's a pretty good example of the problem with nations when they're imperial and they're like, I just have to lord over other countries, is that at some point you get a little bit too cocky. You start picking fights you can't win. You spread yourselves too thin, and then you bankrupt your empire. You're winning, and then you end up in Russia, and you're like, I can't lose this thing. And then you lose 60% of your military to the winner. Or in our case, you win World War II, and then you're like, hey, let's go kick some ass in Vietnam. Let's go kick some ass in North Korea. Hey, let's go spend 20 years in Iraq and then Afghanistan. And then you're like, shit, we spent all the money, and we didn't actually win anything. All right, now let's move on to our next quick topic, which is Jack Smith. And the polar ice is worse than Watergate. And Republicans, can you actually sell a story? I mean, if what they did of getting wiretaps on all of you guys, and maybe it's just that the media is so left-wing that they did a better job of talking Russia collusion for 2 years and that Donald Trump's a Russian asset. But first, you guys were going after the Bidens for all of their criminal behavior, and you came up with nothing compelling, and nothing happened. I don't know what the Bidens were actually doing out in the Ukraines or what the Hunter Biden scheme was, but they got away with it. And you really didn't convince the general American people to the criminality of the Biden family. And now you've got where they clearly were weaponizing the Justice Department to go after Donald Trump. We all clearly saw that. And now you apparently got this storyline of the overreach to the extent that they were wiretapping or taking the phone records of all these Republican senators. Are you guys actually going to do anything with or sell this story? Is anyone going to go to jail? Is anyone going to lose their job? Are people going to get pulled in and have to do anything in congressional hearings other than be allowed to just sit there and lie through their teeth? It seems like the Republicans just do not do a good job of actually, selling these stories or prosecuting Democrats. The Democrats are better at whining and complaining and making it look like the Republicans are evil. All right, now let's take a look at Mamdami, who just won. And you've got this 34-year-old non-American socialist who managed to become mayor in New York City. And what am I doing wrong in life? In addition to getting mad sooner, I got to start getting into the universe and just lying a whole lot more. Anyone want to back a campaign? I'll start campaigning on the whatever you need campaign. The Jewish Socialists of America, whatever you need, we're not sending it to Israel and we'll give it to you instead campaign. We get interest-free loans for everybody so you can start your business. The whatever you need campaign. You just show up to events and you ask the crowd, hey, what do you guys need? I'll get you all of that. No problem. What do you need? I'll get it done. You want a free bus ticket? I mean, how pathetic is it that they managed to bribe New Yorkers with free bus tickets? The lack of imagination of New Yorkers and how good their life is, that a free bus ticket got them to vote for a socialist. This is the problem if things get bad enough or there seems to be such a lack of economic opportunity, is that people start getting suckered by socialist or I would say white nationalism, where they're just like, well, we got to try something new. At least this guy is willing to say that he wants to represent my interests, and I know everyone else is lying and stealing from me all the time, and this entire game is rigged against me. So who do I have to group up with that's going to go steal from the other people and give it to me instead of giving it to other people. Anyways, Donald Trump, I think his policies, he's got time till the midterms to, I guess, get those factories open from the tariffs and to get us out of all these foreign wars and to at least make it seem like there's economic opportunity and economic prosperity coming your way if you just want to stick with the Republicans. And luckily, as we continuously showcase on the show, the Democrats could not be dumber or more dangerous, even then, as much as I hate Donald Trump. But I think the constant great is best, like no one's ever seen. I think it's fallen on deaf ears. I think he's got a problem with the Epstein storyline. I think he's got a problem with the tariffs he's trying to enact. And listen, we'll see how it all plays out. But, the fact that a straight up socialist could get elected mayor in New York City, which I guess what we can all hope for at this point is that he enacts all the policies that he's looking for. All of the big business and wealthy people leave New York City for more prosperous areas. And more and more poor people that don't actually pay taxes move into New York City. And then the whole thing goes bankrupt and all of those whiny people move to other places and beg Republicans to just be able to live there and maybe be able to mooch a little bit of health care. Now, let's talk about Dick Cheney, which I love all the news companies. They're trying to find one thing. Well, he had a nice smirk. He really filled the space. Man had gray hair. But for every company or article that I've seen that is trying to sell Dick Cheney to us all these years later is anything other than the man that corrupted our empire, who saw an opportunity in 9/11 and then decided to spend as much money. I mean, you got to realize, or at least from my memory of looking at charts of government spending, the Republicans under Bush really kickstarted overspending policies, and it was in pursuing foreign wars of what, now that it's 30 years later, have we paid? Well, I guess we haven't had any terrorist attacks. Maybe Dick Cheney was right. We haven't had a terrorist attack since 9/11. So maybe that was the best money we've ever spent, everybody. Or maybe we really blew up our empire as we showcased, oh, look, government can spend all this money and there's no problems. And then you just keep getting inflation and more people being like, well, you're spending all this money on these dumb wars. So give me some free healthcare. Give me some free this. Give me some free this. Talk about the road to socialism, just increase government spending. And isn't it disgusting that when someone as horrible as Dick Cheney, who amongst the general public has anything but horrible thoughts for Dick Cheney? And the fact that, I guess there's some sort of a feeling that just because he was a government vice president of influence, they still have to figure out how to praise him because, it's like the monarchy of government, and that they don't want to admit how evil and terrible government is. And so they still feel like we need to be respectful towards the government officials. And to me and to you, we should all agree that that's a little bit disgusting. When someone is as horrible as Dick Cheney, we should be able to be like, that guy's dead. He was the worst thing that ever happened to our country. And maybe for these other narcissists that want to pursue life in government, they get afraid of the horrible articles that will be written about them on their deathbed. Because no one likes it if when they're dead, everyone's like, ding dong, the witch is dead. Nobody's looking for that. That might actually scare some people into, oh, can I actually leave a private company and then funnel as much money back into that private company, basically go underground for 20 years because everybody hates me? And then the news and media, they're still just writing nice stories about how great of a world leader Dick Cheney was. And they'll speak to all the positive things about him and why. Why do we so need to keep this illusion alive about how wonderful government is, that even when reprehensible individuals are there and they enact terrible policies amongst all of us that still influence our lives to this day, these news agencies still have to find any angle that they can to celebrate the guy. All right, let's thank another one of our sponsors, sheathunderwear.com, greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. And I still got my original pairs. You can use promo code RYM. You can get yourself 20% off the greatest underwear that's graced the balls of man. I got to give Bobby the Bank a call, see what kind of Thanksgiving action they come over your way, because I can recommend that as the holiday season rolls up, buy Sheath underwear for your loved ones, or, if they got crazy sales going, I recommend stocking up, which I will be doing as well. All right, let's take some comments. Mike Tucker agreed on the eggs. Oh, I already read that. I already read that comment. Robbie, being a libertarian would be dead set on having squinty girlfriend slash, I don't know what I'm reading there. Jack Burton, cute that you think we still have a Bill of Rights and a Constitution. Fair enough. Mike Tucker, plenty of ancient mystical porches and space age toilets out here in Japan, man. Just saying. Listen, you know, I can't. A lot of my stuff did not even work all that well in Canada because I have a few too many. I got more stuff now. I got a half hour that's not political, so I'd play. There would just have to be real money in it. If someone wants to sponsor a Japan tour so I can have my ass cleaned by the robotic toilets and come back and let people know that there's a better way, I would be willing to do a weekend in Japan. It would be interesting to do. Walk around in a geisha or whatever people do out there. I'm sure to the extent that I freak out, even traveling America and did not like Mexico, that, you know, people love seeing other places. I like being in America, man. I'm still an idiot that way. Runaway Slav, serious question. How can Zoran be labeled anti-Semite when approved by so many New York City rabbi coalitions? Why are you asking me this question? Did I ever say that Zoran was an anti-Semite? Is that something that I've said on the show? Why do I get to answer for what other people are doing? How is that relevant to anything I've said on the show? Those who opened the gates of Toledo, Constantinople, and Vienna are doing the same in New York City. How about instead of being cunty and asking me questions, if you have something to say, just say it and don't ask me riddles. You could say, this is the better way to do that, Runaway Slav. Here's the problem with Zoran that nobody's mentioning, is that he's actually working with this group of people, and here's the agenda he's looking to enact. As opposed to asking me some riddle as if I'd made a statement that I hadn't made, and I have to defend some position that I never took. Anonymous at Runaway Slav just saw a pic of a meeting with Soros' limp wrist son. It's all a joke. All right. Here was a Wall Street Journal opinion article. Dick Cheney made the most of the vice presidency. He was a champion of free market and conservative values during his long lifetime of public service. This guy, I think, actually worked with Dick Cheney, but it's just unbelievable that, you know, I'm still reading articles as if this guy was a great person. All right. This is from The Hill. It's what I mentioned earlier, that at least, I don't know if it's happening, but the Pentagon has approved sending the Patriot missiles, which are a more offensive weapon, over to the Ukraine. And then, of course, Trump threatening military action in Nigeria in defense of Christians, which I don't know. How do you guys feel about, you know, fighting a foreign war on behalf of Christians in the area? I guess it's the circle. Well, we're doing it for the Jews in Israel, so shouldn't we be able to do it for the Christians? And if we're doing it for this people, shouldn't we be able to do it for this people? And if we're going to do all that, shouldn't I at least be able to have free healthcare? It just seems like more escalating tensions, and I'm willing to bet that there's some other agenda than just protecting nice, righteous Christians in the area. All right, let's turn it over to some random clips that I came across, and here we've got the old head of the CIA really flexing his muscles, doing some chest poking, and I'll roll the clip, and then we can give some comments. Here we go.
Why didn't you remember on the Hunter Biden? Why? Because I think, and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that. Yes, Comey knew. Comey knew. The literature said it had all marks.
So firstly, I love just his general walk where he seems to waddle like a penguin. And now, do you guys think, is that the least or most threatening chest poke you've ever seen in your life, where it's the least threatening because it just seems a little effeminate, and that for the old head of the CIA, just like the way they play spy bosses in movies, is this ever what you would have envisioned? Sometimes I wonder if it's a psyop of showcasing evil characters that are so different than what evil actually looks like in real life to kind of throw us off of their trail of what we think evil is supposed to look like. And then sometimes, just because like you would think the brilliance of what it would take to run the CIA, you wonder, is this guy secretly very brilliant and comes off like a bit of a goofball? Or we're completely misled about even the people who run the intelligence agencies, where this guy's just a total bozo. Then you also got the element of, if he's got so much power, he's just not used to having to actually be addressed or be threatened. But back to my original question, is that the least threatening chest poke ever because this guy can't do anything? or the most threatening because you might wake up in some foreign property that's not even in this country with no trace of your bank account, family, or any other information whatsoever, and then be getting hunted for sport and be like, what, you think you're going to talk to me at a party that way? You think you're going to talk to me this way? Anyways, it does seem like he's getting a little bit rattled over what was clearly a cover up on behalf of the Bidens after, he went to work at CNN, but I just see that as taking a different job at the CIA, where you go from working at the CIA to then working on the media division of the CIA. And now you're there to you still got all your intelligence clearance. And now you're just on the news, basically giving the news and viewpoints of the CIA. And so he was there for the whole Russiagate scandal. And then they were there to bury the Hunter laptop Biden story, where it got stripped from the internet on account of these people going, it has all the hallmarks of a and then they turn around afterward. Wow, we never said it was well, you guys took it off of the internet. It's the thing I've said before of like, there needs to be some sort of like an accountability clause of like, who exactly is absolutely saying this and what will be because they did that during, I never said this, we never threatened you. It was that agency who did that, agency who did that. It's like at the time that they make the statement, they will strip your freedoms, take away your ability to comment on the internet on the basis that the adults in the room, the authoritative figures have made a statement that something's not truthful. And then once it's debunked, we never even said that. So I don't know. There's got to be something that if you're being removed from the internet for stating something, it's because these people actually said something in a way that they can be held accountable for what they're saying. And it might even with the Comey, they might actually be going after all these individuals. But, at the moment, at least it's fun to see him rattled and, chest poking a little bit. All right, here, let's take a couple comments and let's cover a couple more stories. At Runaway Slav, just saw a pic of him meeting with Sorrell. I already read that. Keegan Sorrell. Rob, if you had to describe yourself as a sandwich, what would it be? Would it be hot or cold, simple or complicated? Oh man, what am I on an interview right now? I would sooner, I'm not going to identify as a cold sandwich. That's ridiculous. Not that I don't like cold sandwich, but there's more gusto to a hot sandwich. And I'd like to be something a little bit, not overly complicated, not like a million layers, but a little bit better than basic, with all the fine elements of something that like leaves an impact, but goes like, this is a classic for a reason. Runaway Slav, I'm fine if Trump lets Eric Prince lose on Africa. Former KGB heads would just have a thug push you out a window as a threat. All right. Now let's look at the topic, the assault by sandwich, which goes on trial in Washington, D.C. So you had this drunken idiot. He's upset over, I believe this is ICE over here, rounding people up. And so he starts yelling, we'll play the video in a minute, but he starts yelling shame at them. The officers could just walk off. The officers could just accept that not everyone likes what they're doing in these cities, but instead they're like, we're the authority and you're going to respect us. They turn back around and they come at him. The guy's eating a Subway sandwich. He throws it at the guy's chest. And for all the criminality that we've seen people be let go for, now this guy is on trial for assault by sandwich. So let's read a couple of the quotes from the Wall Street Journal. I understand you all may have views about the federal law enforcement presence in D.C., and that's fine, Justice Department lawyer John Perrin said in opening statements, but respectfully, that's not what this case is about. This case is about the fact that you can't go around throwing stuff at people when you're mad. And, it's kind of about what the people are doing also, because, I don't know, there's a little bit of a checks and balance that, let's just say, you were coming into cities and you were enforcing COVID on everybody and nobody wanted COVID. And so everyone starts throwing, harmless sandwiches out of their windows at you, like scenes in a movie where everyone's just throwing food at the cops or whatever and no one's getting hurt. We're not throwing rocks. We're not even throwing tomatoes. You're throwing flimsy. Is there a flimsier sandwich than the Subway sandwich? Yeah, I mean, even if you let that bread sit outside for a month and get hard and crispy, that's a flimsy sandwich. That sandwich does not have a lot of density or weight to it. If you had to pick an item, any random item that someone could toss at you that was food related, is there any item that you would rather be hit on more than a wrapped Subway sandwich? I mean, that's barely going to mark up your clothes. that thing's going to congeal together and fall to the floor. I think you can survive sandwiches being thrown at you. And I do think it is relevant to what the activity that you were doing, because of course this is just the classic, well, that's law enforcement. We all have to respect law enforcement all the time. And well, I don't know. What's the mechanism? I'm not advocating for going out there and throwing sandwiches at cops. In fact, if you do so and you get clubbed, you throw a sandwich at a cop. It's like that old Chris Rock sketch about, talking back to like how to survive being pulled over by the police. I tend to, be pretty friendly. And you want to know what white privilege is? It's just smiling, nodding, and not, giving the officer a hard time. You want to know how you can probably get away with some stuff? It's not being a dickhead to cops. And I'm not telling you to be dickhead to cops, but on the same note, pretending, if I understand that a lot of us want to see deportations, but you can also understand that a lot of people don't. And if government's forcefully engaging in something that most people don't want to see, that I guess is going to be relevant to the jury if you did something as, because we're not talking about shooting a cop. We're not talking about throwing a rock at a cop. We're talking about being an idiot and throwing a sandwich at a cop. I guess what the cop was doing is a little bit relevant. Like if the cop's just doing a traffic ticket and you throw a sandwich at him, firstly, I don't know. You guys think you should go to jail for throwing a sandwich at a cop? Well, I'm asking you guys in the chat, maybe you go, that's an officer of the law. That guy's doing important work, and we can't have people throwing sandwiches at cops. And that's assault by sandwich. Even if there's no actual threat of anything, you can't throw. And I agree, you can't throw sandwiches at cops. I agree with you. I'm just saying that's a bit of a stretch to say that there's absolutely, no relevancy. All right, I think I have to read this, and I got something blocking it. You guys can look at my pants while I stand. First, the witness stand was the agent who took the sandwich in the chest. That's the funniest way to say that. Took the sandwich in the chest. It's as if like it was actually like a bullet to the chest. It's not the guy who had a sandwich tossed at him. It sounds a little bit more threatening when you go, the guy who took the sandwich to the chest. Firstly, the witness stand was the agent who took the sandwich in the chest, Gregory Lamore, a 23-year-old veteran of Customs and Border Protection. Lamore testified that he could feel the impact of the sandwich through his ballistic vest. Man, isn't that amazing, being a 23-year-old veteran with a bulletproof vest on and then going, I could feel what does that mean, the impact of it? So you felt that it hit you? Or are you trying to say that you're such a bitch that the sandwich actually hurt you? You were injured by the sandwich that hit your bulletproof vest. You gotta love lawyers. Oh, I could even feel the impact. You mean so you actually recognize that something tapped your chest? You can recognize an impact if I literally tap you with a pen. I recognize the impact. All right, anyways, through the ballistic vest, the sandwich exploded all over. Once again, they use the word exploded, like as if something horrible had happened and not just that it was a crushed tomato. He said, and it smelled of onions and mustard. The horror of having to smell onions and mustard. I love this cop. He's like, Subway sandwiches are so reprehensible, disgusting. I mean, if this guy had thrown a quality sandwich at me, I don't even know if I would press charges. But something as garbage filled as Subway, the indignity of that on my work day while trying to deport people, I had to smell onions and mustard. What is this guy putting on his sandwiches? All right, and here, now we can actually roll the tape. Roll the tape, producer man.
Shorts allegedly yelling at federal officers on 14th Street in D.C.
Y'all laughing, but that's the truth though.
Moments later, video appearing to show him crossing the street, screaming.
So firstly, listen, you should be allowed to yell shame, and the officers don't have to come back over and escalate it. You could just keep going about your day and realize, all right, I am an officer, and not everyone agrees with what I'm doing. And this guy's a drunk idiot. I can't imagine I would ever get along with the guy in the pink shirt. And if I was standing on that street, was aiming, I'd be like, "Ugh, come on, guy." But you should be allowed to yell shame at a cop, and I don't think the cop needs to come over and do that thug thing of like, "I'm an officer. You're gonna respect what we're doing. What I'm gonna do is you're gonna like what I'm doing. I am here to lord above you, and you're gonna respect the authority of what I'm doing." All right, and so they do kind of escalate it, unless this is out of order and the guy was in his face first, then he was yelling shame afterwards. But it seems like the cops were on the other side of the street. They're yelling shame at him, and then the cops come over. He's holding the sandwich, and here's where things get heated. and he gets mustard and onions on the guy.
Screaming just inches from a U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer's face.
Hey, Daddy, let's go get him, bro. Let's get
And
him.
then appearing to hit the officer in the chest with a foot-long
That's got to be the worst thing to go to jail for, and the officer in court being a bitch going, I could feel the impact and smell the mustard of the onions. I mean, look at that. The thing basically stayed in the bag
officer's
anyways.
face.
Hey, Daddy, let's go get him, bro. Let's get
And
him.
then appearing to hit the officer in the chest with a foot-long Subway
I could
sandwich.
feel the impact on my bulletproof vest, and I could smell onions. Put this guy in jail for life. Mike Tucker, mostly peaceful lunch. The sandwich is a marginalized victim of society. It's the voice of the unheard right. Runaway Slav, have fun at Skankfest NOLA. I won't be making it this year. Do drink irresponsibly. Thank you for your blessings. This is a BDSM fantasy of Zach Amigo getting sandwiches thrown at you. Not sure I followed that one. All right, I think I have one more topic here. All right. A number of Biden aides have been pulled into, it's not like full congressional hearings, but I guess they got some sort of like congressional prosecutor type person getting all these people on the record to what extent they noticed diminishing mental faculties of Biden. And obviously, they're trying to either hold some of these people accountable for lying if they clearly saw that the guy was completely mentally incapacitated and they were covering for him, or exposing the Democrats for covering for the fact that he was basically serving in the position while he had dementia. And I would love to have the role of being able to do the questions, because I actually think I could do a better job than this guy with no formal training whatsoever. I just think I could ask a better series of questions of tripping these people up and exposing them for the liars that they are. And so, you know, these people are all as dumb as Biden. They can't remember any of the specifics. They never noticed any of him being incapacitated. I watched another video and the lady was basically saying, you know, note cards were presented to Biden to make decisions and he would take them home and then magically decisions would be made. Obviously, Biden wasn't running the show and people were covering for him. I think we all know that to be true. And there's now 25 hours of different people giving testimony who don't remember any of the specifics, never saw nothing, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And you've got this guy who is a Biden aide, real creepy individual. I mean, like dead-eye claymation type character. And I want to play this clip because I found this clip to be somewhat telling, because he's talking about censoring media agencies or not giving them access in response to bad coverage. But of course, he frames it as reporting that lacked context or lacked truth, but context and truth as defined by him, which essentially includes, hey, we're lying and we have a narrative that we're trying to put forward. And so if people are not willing to cover the narrative in the way that we would like to have it, then obviously we're not going to allow these people to cover these topics and we're not going to make it easier for them. And obviously we know that this is the way that the game is played, but it's just like the classic appeal to authority of him being like, well, they're reporting lacked truth in our opinion, or it lacked context. Yeah, but that's down to your opinion. And your opinion was to protect what your agenda was. Anyways, with all that said, we can watch some moments from this creepy guy spinning his side of the story. Roll the tape.
Sorry to go back, I think, to our last hour. You told us that you've previously yelled at and sworn at journalists before. Have you ever threatened a journalist or an editor physically?
Never.
Have you ever threatened a journalist or editor regarding their career prospects?
No.
Have you ever threatened journalist or editor with discipline that they would receive from their own publication?
The only thing that could occur to me is sometimes when you are having a debate with a reporter, which is a big part of every spokesperson's job, whatever the party or Hill administration, you can sometimes say, I think that something you are considering claiming is at odds with the facts here is why, here is public information, or you have heard from somebody who was on hand for the events under discussion, and that if you made that claim and it was demonstrably untrue, it would not look good, or it would not be appreciated. I have had things of that nature said to me by
essentially mafia talk. I've never directly threatened someone, but I was coached in the kind of language of the threats I'm allowed to make to people, which would include A, the assumption that my narrative is true and theirs is false, and B, if they don't publish my narrative, they might have some problems at their newspaper who will be upset with them for putting out what I deem to be false information.
journalists, right? Like if you say X, like I don't think your bosses would be super happy, right? But it's not my style to threaten people like that.
Have you ever threatened a journalist or an editor with future access to admin officials?
Like the AP, maybe?
I'm sorry?
Like the AP, maybe? Sorry, go ahead.
Would you like an interview, counselor? We can
No,
make it that.
you could talk to your colleagues about the AP, the press pool, but go ahead.
I do think that is a fair point when the current president is suing the Wall Street
I'm asking
Journal.
about you, sir.
No, I know, but
It's a nice deflection to go, and listen, I'm not saying everything that Donald Trump's doing is 100% above board, but you know, you're here to answer questions, and it's a nice deflection of going, well, listen, I'm not going to answer for my behavior. Well, that's why you're here, you know? The tattletale. Also, can you imagine having to take a phone call from this guy? You're trying to do your job, and this little punk is threatening you? I mean, he does have Chief Lizard or Lizard Army brain, and, you know, look at those eyes and the way he operates. But just imagine taking the least threatening phone call from this guy and being like, oh, no, my life's going to be ruined if I don't listen to dork face over here. Let's continue.
I think that if the current president is suing the Wall Street Journal for outing elements
Once
of his
again, sir,
relationship
I
with
would ask that
Jeffrey
you just-
Epstein,
You may not like his answer, but let him finish.
I would ask that he answer my question.
Finish your answer.
the current president is suing the Wall Street Journal because they detailed that he wrote a disgusting letter to Jeffrey Epstein that said, "May every day be another beautiful secret." And I do not think that anything I have ever done in my life could come remotely close to how unethical that is.
Okay, now I would like you to answer my original question, which was, have you ever threatened a journalist or editor with future access or pulling back future access to admin officials?
The only thing that occurs to me is
It's such a weird, the only thing that occurs to me
if someone had demonstrated a pattern of hiding relevant facts.
In other words, if someone did not play ball with us and go with our narrative, of course we weren't going to give them more access. But it's such like Nazi interrogator talk, at least from like movies, where it's if someone demonstrated a pattern of doing things well, who gets to decide not truthful? Isn't that censorship? If that's your determination that what they said is not truthful?
Or of
Because how do you differentiate that between actual truth or just the narrative that you prefer, which can be a lie?
being over the top in their negativity to the degree that we did not trust them to be
What does that mean? Trust them. What? To share the narrative the way that you prefer it?
fair about their representation of people.
Fair and over the top now is not even what they were saying was untruthful. It's when they were reporting things that were true, we would have preferred a more favorable spin.
We could then consider being less liberal in the way that we granted interviews, but that would have to be based on
Less liberal. We were doing them a favor, so we would do them less favors if the coverage wasn't up to par with what we were looking for. It's a slick way of talking, this kid.
A very significant set of events. And I would not consider that to be a threat. I would consider that to be a reasonable caution about, hey, you left out a really important thing that.
All right, that is our episode. Had enough for today. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Please, if you're out in Jacksonville, Florida, Charleston, South Carolina, or Savannah, Georgia, or New Orleans, last chance to catch about 30 years of this year's material live, because it's all going to be going out in December in different formats, because I might put out the full set from a comedy club, either from Skankfest or Dave's thing, and then there's also going to be some stuff from the porches cut up, mixed up with some sketches. So please follow the Robbie the Fire channel. You're gonna get a lot of stand up over here. The Run Your Mouth podcast channel is coming down at the end of the year. And go to porchstore.com. There's a Denver date in December. There's a New Orleans date the day before Skankfest. If you're not coming to Skankfest, or even if you are, I got to hit them up. I'm hoping to book some local openers who are real funny, who I don't think are working the event. And then I also do, 10-minute sets amongst the festival, but it's different seeing a full headlining show. But that's it. Thank you for hanging out. That is our episode. Back next week with a brand new episode. Have a great